Today we're going to be talking about a section of the Jacksonian era, from 1832 to 1837, including the Battle of the Bank and the election of 1832.
By Anton,
Colin,
and Ryan. The Bank of the United States, run by its president Nicholas Biddle, controlled most of the nation's wealth. Biddle was not elected, however, and was controlled by wealthy investors. He prioritized profit and invested in Eastern industry while foreclosing Western farms. Andrew Jackson, as the people's president and a Western politician, was strongly opposed to the bank. Senator Henry Clay brought a bill to Congress about renewing the bank's charter, not set to expire for another 4 years, in an attempt to make it a main issue in his upcoming presidential run against Jackson in the election of 1832. After the bill passed Congress, Jackson was faced with the choice to sign the bill, alienating his Western voter base, or veto it, losing the support of wealthy and influential groups. He chose to veto it, and it paid off. The majority of common people supported Jackson's decision, and Clay lost the election 219 to 49 in electoral votes. Jackson, now in his second term, began pulling money out of the bank to stifle its power and influence, and stored the surplus in pet banks, state institutions that were very pro-Jackson. A desperate Biddle, in an attempt to show the public the importance of the bank, called in all of the bank's loans, creating a small financial crisis. His stunt only worsened the public's view of the institution, and the economy suffered during Biddle's panic. In the absence of the U.S. bank, wildcat banks popped up and poured out paper money. The economy became very unstable, and paper money was so unreliable that Specie Circular was issued, requiring that public land be bought with stable metal currency. In only a year, the U.S. bank had disappeared, leaving only pet banks and wildcat banks. Paper currency's reliability had been destroyed, and no one wanted to spend hard cash. In 1837, there was financial panic and a crash, leaving the economy and banking system in disarray.
The pros and cons of the national bank. The Bank of the United States had its pros and cons. The pros were that it provided a stable paper currency with actual value. It held and protected most of the government's wealth, and it held most of the gold and silver in America as well. The bank gave out loans that provided credit and helped grow the nation's economy. In addition to its stable source of paper currency, it prevented the outbreak of unstable banks like wildcat banks, which were small setups of chairs and suitcases full of cash. Their currency was like the currency issued during the time of the Articles of Confederation and the American Revolution. It was essentially worthless and depreciated quickly. The cons were that the bank was a private institution. It was mainly controlled by elite investors who had no interest in helping the common people. The bank foreclosed many Western farms, draining funds from the West and pouring them into the East. The investors who controlled the bank prioritized profit over the benefit of the people. Also, having an unelected man have a monopoly on American finance was against the values of the Constitution. Thus, many of the common people strongly opposed the bank, while the wealthy businessmen of the East supported it. This prominent issue would be a main scene in the next American presidential election of 1832.
how did the election of 1832 reflect modern politics? The election of 1832 featured two main competitors, Henry Clay and Andrew Jackson. Jackson was of the New Democratic Party, and Clay was an anti-Jackson Democrat with Whig leanings. This election proved as a monumental step towards modern politics and modern presidential elections. To begin with, it was the first time that a third party entered into the presidential election picture, when before, the elections were strictly two-party competitions. This third party took the form of the anti-Masonic Party and were strongly anti-Jackson, and thus took many votes away from Jackson. Another large addition to this election is the development and formalization of party platforms. Before this election, parties were more of a group of people with similar views, but with the election of 1832, parties formalized, published, and publicized their policies and platforms to the public for the first time. Furthermore, parties called together organized national nominating conventions for the first time, where parties would determine which candidate would run to represent them. This tradition of convention has continued throughout American history and still takes place before every election today. Finally, this election was one of the first times that the desires of the common man were reflected. Dominating the elections previously were the elite and wealthy Easterners, but in the 1832 election, Jackson, with his anti-bank and pro-Western expansion views, earned the support of the common Western and Southern farmer. Thus, Jackson, the idol of the masses, was able to soundly defeat his opposition Henry Clay with a huge electoral gap of 219 to 49. This historic 1832 election helped pave the path and set precedent for the future elections and the future of America.
Protect Philippe the plain one. That's too much sauce. Hermes in the aim. That's too much.
Thanks for watching, history friends.
Let me know before I was famous. I had too much sauce.